Everybody's talking about Marvel Rivals, so I sink my teeth into making my own version out of that, right? So if you're new to this channel, I'm a fitness enthusiast and I also do artwork and design. So I do a lot of character designs. So that's what I did here with this illustration, all right? So I'm gonna take you guys through the step-by-step process. And before we get started, I wanna give a shout out to this channel because this channel actually gave me inspiration onto making this, right? So he did his own version out of it. So shout out to Overall Art and Design, right? So he made a DC version instead of Marvel Rivals. He did DC Rivals, and it got a good amount of views. So I'm just gonna show you guys until the end. Let's skip this crazy ad because we ain't here for the ad, right? We are here for his illustration. So let's go all the way to the end, right? So if you guys, definitely support him because he is going to, if it gets a lot of views, even more views, I'm gonna see later on when he's gonna make his rendered version, right? So definitely check it out. I'll put the link in the description below. All right, so let's minimize this and I'm going to show you guys how I made this illustration, right? And go through, the insides of what I went through as an artist, like go inside the mind of an artist. All right, so without further ado, let's dive into it. All right. So first things first, let's open it up. There it is. So I use myself as reference a lot of the times, right? And I lower down the opacity. Now, I'm going to walk through not just the step-by-step process, but also feeling-wise, I'm a human being. This is not AI, right? So what I was going through when making this illustration, right? So at first, like many of these illustrations on this channel, I used the photo as reference. And when I was making this, right, I'm using the Wacom tablet, right, medium Wacom tablet. I was going through doubt. I'm not gonna lie to you. I was going through doubt, and throughout this drawing process, it took much longer than I anticipated with the sketch alone. So you guys can see here, it looked like I gave this character a bit of a BBL, but no. I have to keep that in mind because a lot of the Marvel Rivals, the design aesthetic, a lot of them are very exaggerated, right? Like exaggerated muscles, humongous shoulders, big arms, big thighs. They don't skip leg day, so they are extremely muscular. So I wanted to keep that in mind when making my version out of this. And again, I was contemplating on whether or not I was going to take inspiration from his, where I'll make like a DC versions, but I went through phases of this channel and in general where I'm getting tired of making like fan art, just constantly pandering towards the algorithm as far as like popular familiarity towards what people are into. And I want to move away from that, but obviously still the algorithm, capitalize off of what people are into as far as Marvel Rivals, right? So it's like the balance, right? Make my own OCD, which is original character design, but taking inspiration off of Marvel Rivals. So you guys can see here, I was exaggerating. Like I made the shoulders like boulders, like even way bigger than my own physique, just to really capitalize off of that superhero look. I'm going to fast forward here. Let it play out. So right over here, now you're seeing that I'm toggling between the photograph and the sketch itself, right? And when I was making this, I still wasn't satisfied with it. I was just, because in the end of the day, I'm drawing this out of my imagination. The only thing I'm using is just the photo as reference, but everything else is just, I don't know what I'm going to be doing because I wanted to break the barrier of just drawing just a character that people are familiar with. Let's see. Perfect. And I didn't want to have the same angle. As you guys see, the same angle where I'm looking. I wanted to give it more of that like downward angle, as if, you know, he's having that growl look, like more like downward rather than just straight forward. And again, I had no idea what is going to be the character, like in terms of like the name. Even finishing this, there's no name to this character. So, you know, give the character's lore down below. What's the name of the character? What's his superpowers? Things of that nature. So when I was making this at this point, I was just like, okay, this character is extremely beefy. Okay, I don't know if I want to make him that muscular. He looks like Ronnie Coleman. His hair, I was like, I was gonna give him a buzz cut, but I decided to give him dreads just because, you know, make it more exaggerated, more expressive. I had a V as a, you know, as a placeholder, because at first I was thinking about with the YouTube channel's name, so I put a V, and then I decided to change it up. I was like, nah, that's kind of corny. There, give him that chiseled jawline, fixing up the eyes, starting to sculpt out the face. It's just interesting because, again, I'm not using a photo as reference at this point. I'm like, okay, he's downward. Gave him the sides there. I was like, let me just give that there as a placeholder. And I'm just taking you through the mindset of an artist, you know, when making stuff like this. Because, again, a lot of the times it's just, you're just trying to figure it out as you're moving forward. Now, this is not the perfect methodology. I mean, normally you will have a bunch of references in front of you, or you have a clear vision of what you want to be accomplished. Now here, I was just improvising, going, figuring out simultaneously. So I gave him these pellets right here on his dreads. I thought that was cool, but as I kept on like moving along, I'm like, it kind of looks like he's wearing like a woman's crown. So I wasn't a huge fan of that. As far as the pose, this is the part right here where, oh man, anatomy wise, I was struggling with the legs. I was struggling with the head too. I looked at Marvel Rivals, and a lot of the heads are small so that the bodies can look bigger. So then I use a parallaxic tool, and I was like, okay, I gotta make the head small. So by making the head small, then it looked kind of weird with the body, because now it looks like the body proportions are off, right? So yeah, just fast forwarding again, just struggling with these legs, man. These quads, they make it look so easy. It is not. I mean, it's harder to actually work out on quads. So I guess they're both difficult, but obviously doing squats is a lot harder than drawing quads. So that's that. But yeah, look at that. Like, I was just like, oh man, look at the legs right here on the left hand side. Because it just, I didn't want the character to look so stagnant where he's just like standing there. I want him to give a little bit of foreshortening, give a little bit of like, you know, of a dynamic pose rather than looking so static. This is why I'm adding the teardrop. Give him that definition. All right, so then the next one right here, because I did a lot of screen recordings, man, a lot. The sketch alone took, I would say, just 3 hours, 3 to 4 hours just on the sketch before even working on the rendering and the color rendering and all that stuff, because it was just a struggle. And this is the point where I'm just like, okay, let's start refining the face more, right? Let's start fixing things up. I started to like the faces. I'm a big fan of, like, you know, anime, comic book art and all that stuff. So I didn't want to just give him like a growl look where he's just angry. So I wanted to look more animated, like one eye is smaller than the other, giving that little bit of a goofy face expression. Because those things that are asymmetrical, it just makes it, you know, it brings it more to life. It makes it look more unique as opposed to everything just so angry and straightforward. All right, so let's fast forward here. Just working on the mouth. Everything is just refining. And this is, speaking of refining, this is the part where I'm like, okay, he's way too bulky. I gotta give it a bit of an asymmetry, you know. And then at this point, I'm okay, the traps are way too, it's too big. So I gotta kind of make it seem as if it's tilting rather than it's just straight, you know. Got rid of the V. And actually was still playing with it because I was gonna make it look three-dimensional, and then I just got rid of it later on. I was like, okay, this doesn't make any sense. I was actually, at this point, I was actually happy with the way the dreads looked. But I was still like, I was going through it, honestly. When I was making this, I was not happy, like, except for the dreads, but everything else, I'm like, I thought this would be, you know, this is my style, right? Like, I thought this would be not too difficult, but when making this, it was a challenge, especially trying to get the proportions right. So then I started working on the underwear, then I went back into the hair. I mean, all this, I'm just fast forwarding here. Just doing lights and shadows as indicators. Went into the belt over there. I was gonna give it a symbol, but I was like, let me just throw like a hexagon, like not trying to go too crazy. Oh gosh, let's talk about the hands. I am not a big fan of drawing hands. I will tell you that right now. Me and hands, we don't go together, okay? Like this, I still struggle with foreshortening, like you see right here, like just to get that foreshortening, like the hand being closer to the viewer. It's always been a struggle of mine, but you know, you gotta just figure it out, right? So I've gotten better over the years, but it's not comfortable enough where I mastered it, you know. But that's one of my challenges I'm still dealing with. So even with that point, I use a paraelastic tool. I'm like, look, I'm not redrawing this hand, so I'll like go back and show you. So right over here, I'm like, okay, I'm just gonna use a paraelastic tool, make it bigger, make it more exaggerated. So yeah, you gotta work smart. Added some veins on his bicep, again, exaggerating the superhero physique. Oh God, so this is the point right here where I was trying to make the hand fist, but I just couldn't get the anatomy right with the forearms to the bicep and the delts. It just looked off. And sometimes whenever you make a sketch, you definitely got to see how it looks as it's zoomed out, because I was so focused zoomed in. So when I zoomed out, I realized, oh crap, I made the hand way too big. You got to see it once I'll show you when I zoom it out. It looked crazy bad. But it happens. This is why it's good to not get so caught up in the zoom in portion of it. So let's show you. See that? See how out of proportion that is? Look at that fist. It's the same size as this, so it just don't make sense, because since the fist is cocked back to this right over here, and I can even show you from a full view. If the fist is cocked back here and this one is more out, it makes no sense for this to be the same size. Otherwise, this hand is like anatomically bigger than this hand. Again, foreshortening. Just gotta keep learning as you go. I should have took a photograph of myself doing a certain pose. That would have made things easier, but I just went and improvised. So that's that. Let's get back into it. So that was out of whack. And then got to the point where I was like, you know what? I'm just gonna darken the arm right here, I'm just gonna make it a shadow section and call it a day. So I eventually put the arm down instead of having it up. I just put it down, just threw it in the background. Like, look, I tried doing something like that, but then it just looked weird. He's like, what is he doing? Like, patty cake? Like, what was happening here? So you gotta have the asymmetry. You don't want to have two fists like this. This is not a hero pose of doing this. It's either one or the other. Otherwise, if you can do cool stuff like this, now it looks more like martial arts rather than a superhero pose. Yeah, I just couldn't get that part right, so I just settled with just throwing it down. I was like, let me just cover it up with some effects. I was like, okay, nothing to see here, right? Just clean that up. Make people focus on this one more than right here. And I'm just being transparent with you. I'm just showing you from a artist perspective that, you know, we're not perfect, right? So there are times where you just gotta do what you gotta do. All right, so moving on. This is when I'm using the pen tool. So I was using the Wacom tablet when it came down to the sketch, right? So now I'm on Illustrator, and now I gotta trace over my sketch and add all of the lights and shadows. So that's what you're seeing here. So I always call this point where now things are coming to life. So I'm no longer using a tablet, I'm using a mouse. And yeah, when I say tedious, yeah. This is why I'm just tracing everything over. Yes, I definitely took a break because I was like, okay, I'm a human being, man. There are times where, you know, you get so caught up in it, and whenever I get into the pen tool and I'm tired, I'm like, okay, let me just power through this. But then it comes to a point where it's like, you know what? You got to pace yourself. So don't force it, you know, don't force it too much. Give yourself a breather, right? Let your eyes rest. So that's what I did. I was like, I always take things into piece by piece. So sometimes I'll tell myself, hey, you know what? Let me just work on the pen tool on the head and just the neck area and the head. Then I'll come back the next day and I'll work on the rest of the upper body. Then a few hours later, I'll come back and I'll work on the lower body. And that's how I kind of do it, like step by step. Otherwise, trying to do everything at once will burn you out. This one was tricky because I had to group everything together just to that. Well, that's actually later on when I end up doing the color rendering, when I had to group the hand together so that way things don't get so complicated. So the hand will be arranged in the front when you're using Adobe Illustrator. All right, so let's get into I think it's the point where, yep, this is when I'm just doing the lower body this time. Again, see how I paced myself. I was like, upper body's done, work on the lower body. So it's the same procedure, work on the lower body. And then this is when I'm adding the colors. Now, this was a challenge because I didn't know what I was gonna do as far as coloring this character. No idea. Just improvising. I was thinking about making it, you know, made it this color, but then I ended up changing it again. I had it blue around it. I mean, like purplish, and I just didn't like it because it started to look like Batman, and it started to look more like a villain rather than a hero. So that's that. So then there, I just honestly just played around with the color swatches that was available, and I was just like, you know what, let's just go with it. Like, don't think about it, just do it. Then I added the green just to create a dramatic backlighting. All right, see how I said I paced myself? So all that was just the rendering of the face. That's all it was, rendering of the face. Now it's all about doing the arms, just working on the upper body. And no one could look like this physique-wise in real life and be natural. No way. This physique is definitely enhanced. It's not natural at all. But it's perfect because it's a superhero, so it's supposed to be. There we go. Now, this is where I got excited. I always get excited whenever I get more into the completion of the color rendering. I got rid of the lightning bolts because I don't know. I was actually thinking about making like a Static Shock type of character because I gave him dreadlocks, but I was like, it didn't look good when I colored it. And then besides, the color in itself has nothing to do with Static Shock, so I just got rid of it. And I just created more like a hexagonian type of shape. Added some glow effect to it. Right? And then from here, this is when I add a gradient tool to just make it shiny. And when I make things shiny, when I copied and pasted, right, as an overlay, that's when I'm like, okay, this looks good. Now you guys are seeing it with the gradient. This is when things started to come to life. This is where I got excited. Before that, I was it was a bit of a drag, I'm not gonna lie. I was like, I just want to get it done. But then it became more like I'm playing a video game where it's like, okay, now it's clicking. And it's always like that whenever I make illustrations, you know? Sometimes it's a roller coaster throughout the whole time. Then there's times where it's like, when is it gonna be done? Like, are we there yet, right? So, yeah. And with Illustrator, you gotta fill in each of the shapes. It's not Photoshop where you could just use the Wacom tablet or Procreate, right, when you use an iPad. And this is what I was talking about with the coloring part of grouping the hands together, so that way it makes things easier when I bring the hand to front. All right. All right. So here I was just trying to, actually, did I just pass? Yeah, I guess it's the right order. Yeah, so just continue with the rendering, and I applied the same rendering at the chest area, right over here. I applied it right over here as well. Create that metallic look to it. And again, what is this character's name? What is this character's backstory? Put it down below. You can tell the guy does not skip leg day. I was gonna add that gradient texture here. I did do that, then I got rid of it because I'm like, it kind of flattens it. I kind of like the contrast of his upper body having the smooth green gradient, and then the lower body keeping it like gunmetal charcoal color. Then I add the same gradient texture on the knee pads. Right over there at the bottom. What's next? Oh yeah, I forgot. I did change the eye color because I didn't like the purple. It was cool as a placeholder, but then it just looked like it didn't pop out as much because purple's like it could be a cool color. So I wanted that green so it could be consistent with everything else that's going on. and I was adding reflective light in with the green. And that's the one thing that, one of the reasons why I decided to make this illustration is because with Marvel Rivals, they have those harsh lightnings, which is pretty much like my style that I like doing, which is the reason why I decided to do it, right? It's up my alley. I put those there, you see, like with the triangle light in there, but I was like, it's overkill. So I decided to get rid of it afterwards. Yeah, I kept fixing the delts to make it more contrast. That right there was too much contrast. I ended up going back there and fixing it. But yeah, I definitely wanted to create a physique where the guy is clearly a beast. His size is enormous. All right, he's a really big guy. Okay, I want to solidify that. That's the biggest thing that people was talking about, no pun intended, with the difference between the way the other Marvel video game looked comparison to Marvel Rivals, right? Marvel Rivals, that's made by China, apparently. That's what someone said. It has those exaggerated features, right? And while the other video game that came out in 2020, it had more realistic, average Joe built proportions. Let's continue here. So I created more contrast over there. I'm gonna also open this up to this. Also gave me inspiration. There we go. Minimize that. Yeah, I was working on the core area, make that lighter, right? And then make that other side white so it could just contrast, so it could pop out more. There you go. See how like the abs pop out? Just understanding the use of the lights and shadows to make things that are 2D to look more three-dimensional. And the reason why I'm going to show you guys this one right here as inspiration is because when I was making this, I was like, you know what? They actually have a vector graphic happening right here, you know, with the character's background. And I really like how they set that up with the silhouette, but then you see the harsh white outline. So I was like, you know what? Why not do the same thing for this character? Instead of just making just the figure, why not add the vector graphic in the background? So after I did this, I also did that as well. I'll show you that. Let's fast forward. Everything here is just refining, adding more reflective lighting. I think this is the same one. Okay, perfect. All right, so how I did this was I went into making a different artboard. Right, so all I did was duplicate the artboard, right? So think of it like copy and pasting. So I have the original one right over here, right? And then the new one is on a different artboard. It's like right here. And I made the whole thing green. I actually made it a darker green after that. And then I started to just make the different selection of making it white. This is going to be the vector silhouette background. And that was one thing I was really excited about. Let me actually rewind it a little bit. Look at that. Look at that silhouette, right? I was like, wow. I mean, and that's the epitome of when you have an exaggeratedly, you know, strong type of design where literally, like, even if you're artist or non-artist, like, you can appreciate the silhouette, you know, by selecting everything. Just make it either black or white, whatever, and make it just one solid color. You can really see how dramatic the character looks. They even talk about that in bodybuilding as well, when it comes down to the silhouette of the person's figure. So when I seen that, that's why I was like, wow. So yeah, so then from here, making everything white, adding two-tone because that's how it was with the reference. And then this was right here, this is when I just wanted to test the composition of how it will look with the vectors, like silhouetted background. And then from there, I was just simply just testing it out. Just testing the waters to see how it looks. And here is the finished one. Right over here. There you have it. So I played around with the gradient tool. I was thinking about like making it into like, you know, adding some, you know, overlays, color grading. But then looking at the original source of how they did it with Marvel Rivals, they didn't do that. It was very vector graphic in the background. And then the foreground is obviously a 3D design, but it doesn't have color grading. It doesn't have any type of dramatic lighting other than just the figure itself. So I just kept mine really simple. So what do you guys think down below? Let me actually zoom in so you guys can get like a better look at it. This was all done on Adobe Illustrator. What is the name of this character? What is his superpowers? He doesn't skip leg day, people. He never skips leg day. Then I'll show you the reference so you can see where I got the inspiration from. All right. And you see with this one how has the white right there, even though it's more dramatic right there because it's a different angle. They didn't use the same model. I used the same model, right? So from a front angle. But yeah, took the same inspiration, did my own version out of it. So that's that. Another thing I want to show you guys is right here. Oh, here it is. There we go. You get to see the whole transformation, right? Starting from the photograph to the Wacom tablet right there, right? On Photoshop. And then the vector graphics on Adobe Illustrator. So step by step process. This one was a challenge, not gonna lie. Definitely was a challenge. Took longer than expected. The illustration took me about like 3 days to make, but the longest portion of it was the sketch itself because I did not go exactly with how the photograph looked in terms of the gesture. There you have it, people. Let's show one right here, which will be the YouTube thumbnail. So what do you guys think, people? In the comments section below, and 30 suggestions on not just the character's name, but also any ideas of like, you know, what would be a theme for an OCD, right? Give me suggestions of an original character design that I'll make into a superhero. It could be a male, female, monster, alien, any of that, all welcomed, all right? So I'll see you guys in the next one, guys. Don't forget to like, share, subscribe. It took me a long time to make this. Bye-bye.